Today we're going to fix a cracked bumper in a very innovative, I think, and inexpensive way. So what we're going to do is first look at the problem, which as you can see is some jackass was driving with a tail hitch plugged in, still on his truck, and we were driving about 10 kilometers an hour on some very icy roads, and he stopped and we just touched at minus 25, and we have a nice round crack in the bumper here. So the simple version of what we're going to do is we're going to take carbon fiber wrap that we picked up on Amazon for 20 bucks, and we're going to wrap just this portion of the bumper here, right, with black carbon fiber wrap. And we also, so it doesn't flip and flop, we're also going to have to fill this hole somehow. This is the answer. Milk jug. So what I've done is I've taken a very sharp X-Acto knife and I've cut out a swatch of plastic. Now the key to doing anything like this is to make sure you don't have hard corners. Make sure you've rounded everything you can. And in this case the jug actually has a corner on it, which is good for me because that'll fit right along the bottom there. So let's see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do two cutouts. One is going to go inside the bumper, and the other is going to go outside. What I'm going to do is adhere these onto here, and I think I'm going to use Gorilla Glue because it's not that important how it looks because it's going to get wrapped. But before we do any of that, you've got to clean this and make sure it is spotless. So otherwise the stick just won't adhere. So what I've got is a lovely... So this bumper has a lot of stone chips and pits in it. There's not much you can do about that, but you're going to want to make sure it's as clean as possible, and make sure you get those edges, and make sure those edges are dry before you do anything, or again, things won't stick. So, pitter patter. Let's get to it. This piece is too big, I think. Slide under there. Yeah, so I'm going to cut that down. I want that to go in like that. Ah, ha, ha. Not too big. Okay, good. I'm going to use some Gorilla Glue on the outside of this. Okay, so you can't see that probably, but I'm just really adhering glue all over the place in here. I don't care how messy it is. I just want it to be relatively solid. So along this crack here, I'll put some as well. Just keep putting this glue around the outside. As I said, this is a bit old, so the glue is not very liquid right now. It's pretty firm. I should probably just go change it, but I don't want to make a trip into town because I live out of town and that's a pain. Okay. Now, I should be using gloves for this, I think, but I'm not going to. There we go. There we go. Now, the key is to get this to stick against the, there we go. Stick against it, which is tough to do, but we're going to make it happen. A little bit of Gorilla Tape from a different project I was working on. I'm going to try to put that along the back of this crack, see if that helps. So, now I've got that in. That covers up the inside nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put double-sided Gorilla Glue tape on here to add some thickness to this. I'll probably actually add 2 layers. And then I'm going to take this very thin plastic milk jug and I'm going to put it on the outside. Just slightly on the outside. So let's just take a look here. So it needs to be that big. Okay, we can do that. That big there by that big there. Perfect. Okay. So let's see what we get here. Let's just cut this down. I want this to go all the way around the corner because I want it to go underneath here quite nicely actually. So I'm going to cut that a little large to start with. So that's going to go on there, and it's very, very thin, so it should be just fine. I don't think you're going to notice it. I'll also sand the edges a bit to make it even thinner. But yeah, that's basically what I'm looking for. Again, a very sharp X-Acto. I'm just cutting around. This is just a rough cut. Done. It's thinner now. And that should slide in that gap for me quite nicely, and it does. And then that goes up, and I can see I can make this smaller again, so I'm just going to cut it around again, slide in like that, and that'll cover that quite nicely. Now what I'm going to do is take some sandpaper and just sand these edges a bit so they're even softer. So yes, when this is done, there'll be a little bump, but it's way better than the giant crack. And if you don't put something behind that hole, what you're going to have is an air pocket, and it is eventually going to fail, and I don't want that. Now it's important that there not be any dust or debris, so I'm going to just dip this in some water. There we go, which is just fine for Gorilla Glue, as you know. So there we go. I'm going to dry it off because you don't want your Gorilla Glue to be wet, you just want it to be damp. Now I'm going to take some Gorilla Glue and put it around the outside and get this a little damp too. Not wet. Before I do that, I have to put the double-sided Gorilla Glue on here. Gorilla Tape, I should say. So let's do that. I'm always terrible at pulling the tape off the back of these things, but I find that an X-Acto knife does help quite a lot. But that's me. I'm sure everybody's got the same problems. There we go. So I'm just going to jam this in the middle, and I'm going to jam that under, because I want that to help that bond. Now this isn't thick enough. As I've said, it has to be roughly the thickness of the bumpers. Again, all I'm trying to do is build it up. I could build it up evenly, but because this is going to be covered, I don't really care. So there we go. Let's just keep plugging away with the tape here. Looks like I'm going to have to use 3 layers. Put some Gorilla Glue on the outside of this. Okay, this glue is now so old that I'm not very happy with it all, so I'm just going to throw out the rest of it. So I've just taken the lid off, and I'm just going to put it in the middle to make it add more space. And believe me, it will foam up and it will add more space. So let's just, you know, act as a filler. Put a little bit of extra glue there. And now I'm just going to slide this in and on and squish it around. And then we're going to have to let it set. So there it is with the patch already set. The glue did not expand at all like I expected, which is very unusual. Again, it's old glue, so I wouldn't make that mistake again. But it's done now, so I can't do much about it. And I had planned to have that foam bubble up a bit and then sand it off. But even after 3 hours, it's still a bit tacky, and it hasn't foamed very much. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put this carbon fiber over top of it and see how that looks. And if it doesn't look very good, I will take the carbon fiber off. I will buy more carbon fiber, well, garbage plastic carbon fiber, stick-on junk, and I will replace it. I will, you know, sand that down and do it again. But it's not a very expensive fix, so let's see what it looks like with what I've got done now. So what I'm going to do is take the hair dryer. I do have a heat gun, but I'm not going to use it because I don't want to warp or affect the plastic here. Just going to use the hair dryer, and I'm going to heat up from the middle, and we're just going to keep going out to one side and then going out to another side. So what I'm going to do is pull this out. So I've got the size, so it's yay big. I could measure it, but I'm not going to bother with that. So it's that big. I'm going to cut it there, and then I'm going to cut it in half, cut down to about, you know, roughly the right size. It's about 25% extra on both sides. And yeah, so the instructions are to pull the backing off and start from the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in the middle here, the paper, and then we're just going to start peeling it back and heating. Okay, so now we're just going to warm up the bumper where we're going to be working. I have a heat gun, but I don't want to use the heat gun because I don't want to warp or discolor anything. And heat guns have a tendency to warp and discolor. So we just want to make sure this is warm. So now pull this over here. And yeah. Okay, so that's the way this is going to... Okay. Okay, so we're just going to start Okay, to make this straightforward, we're going to go from one side to the other, and we're going to start on this side because it's the shorter side. Okay, because this is going to be a pain. I'm going to get some tape and I'm going to tape this up to hold this up. But you could probably use anything. There, that's just out of the way now. So let's start working our way along. I think the best thing to do is just pull the backing tape off all together on this side, yeah? Okay. Make sure we have enough left underneath. Okay, I think we have to pull this top plastic off too, because it's just in the way. What do you think? You don't care. Let's pull this protective tape off. Okay, so what I'm going to use here is a little plastic credit card to squish into the edges, and then we're going to trim it back. So, let's start from the middle again and try to work our way out. We'll do the top first. Okay, so now I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and we're going to just trim along that edge as carefully as we can. Now I'm using an extremely sharp new blade because I don't want to cut the bumper. Okay, so let's get to work on the more challenging side.
It doesn't really matter.
You can be closer. Okay, so there is the finished bumper, and if you look closely, you'll definitely see the bump because I didn't have time to sand it down, but it sure as hell looks a lot better than a giant hole in the bumper. And because I made it sort of round, it looks like it is actually, might be something from the factory when you're looking at it from here. You may not even notice it. You might think it's a connection point or something. So that's it. If you have any questions, please get a hold of us at www.urtech.ca. Thank you. Bye-bye.